Blue Wire Hustle proudly presents All Eyes on Cleveland. Tonight we are doing a Browns mock draft breakdown edition of the show with special guest Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. He'll be with us momentarily. Today is Wednesday, April 7th, the year 2021. Welcome to All Eyes on Cleveland. I'm your host, Brad Ward. Mikey's on the ones and twos. Make sure you hit the subscribe button at the bottom. And if you listen on podcast, it's available where all popular podcasts are found. Last week we had Troy Hill on the show, so I have to do this real quick.
Sir, all eyes on Cleveland. We here, yeah.
Love that, for sure. And before we get into anything else, we have a mailbag edition after Randy is done tonight, so make sure you stay after the show for that. But first and foremost, let's bring Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily for our mock draft breakdown onto the show. Randy, how we doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, Brad. Thanks a lot for having me.
Oh, absolutely thrilled to have you, sir. Saw your mock draft today and thought that we should hop right into that. Talk a little bit about you're at Dog Pound Daily. How long have you been there? And you're working NFL Spin Zone, both fan-sided, right?
Yeah, correct. They're both fan-sided. I've been with fan-sided for about 5 years now. Dog Pound Daily, moved over there as an editor in February of 2018. Spin Zone, I've been with almost since the beginning, so I've been with them for a long time.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show for sure to break down your mock here today. Can't do any better than getting a mock fresh off the presses here on a mock draft breakdown. So let's get into some of that. Let me, Mikey, see if Mikey can do this properly here. There we go. Good job, Mikey. All right, and we're up here, and we've got your mock here in front of us. As you can check this out at Dog Pound Daily by Randy Gurzi. Right off the top, we see, you wrote a little bit here, but your first pick at 26, you have Greg Newsome, the second from Northwestern. This is a guy that we've seen mocked a lot to the Browns, right? And a guy that you mentioned here right in the top of your article that we know they've held a virtual meeting with. So obviously some interest there. They seem to have had a lot of meetings with a lot of corners, which is a kind of a trend I think we're starting to see here. But talk about Greg Newsome and what you like about him.
What's funny is when they first looked at him, it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago when the news kind of came out that they had their virtual meeting with him. It kind of seemed like maybe a second round kind of guy. But the more that you're hearing scouts talk about him, then in addition to that, you have the back injury to Caleb Farley. It kind of seems like Greg Newsome's name's popping up a little bit. He's coming up a little more on the boards. He just seems like a really good fit with the Browns. He's got the big frame, 6'1", 190 pounds. He just kind of fits with that lengthy, rangy outside corner guy. I know you had Troy Hill on the show not too long ago, and Hill, even he said on the show that he enjoys playing in the slot. He can do both. He can play on the outside, but he's a little bit better in the slot. So I think Cleveland really needs to get that other guy that can play on the outside. With Newsome, though, there is a couple concerns, one being that he still has not played a full season. He struggled with some injuries as well. So I think medical checks will, of course, be important on that. But if everything's good with him, it's a good player. You'd like to see him pull in a few more of the interceptions. But even saying that, J.C. Horn, a lot of people are saying he's a top 15 pick. He only had one more pick in his career than Newsome. So, he's a guy that can get it done.
For sure. One of the things about picking at 26, Randy, for sure, I think, is that you're not going to find a perfect guy, right? These guys at 26 are all going to have some sort of a red flag, more than likely, unless, somebody falls right in their lap. Great. The things about Newsome that jump to me, he's excellent in zone coverage. The Browns are going to run a ton of that cover 3 and a ton of the cover 4. And I think he was number 1 overall coverage guy at PFF. And then you mentioned the negatives. He was dinged in 3 years at Northwestern, which is kind of problematic because that's the problem with the guys we have, right?
Right.
Is their availability with Greedy, and that nerve damage issue is not something that, we're really sure about at this point. But definitely somebody that is a popular pick to go to the Browns, and I would not be against it all. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we are seeing a trend towards corner maybe there at 26, even though I kind of think that edge should be the priority there, but it depends on, I guess, I think that corner is a little bit deeper of a class. A guy I really like here you have in the in the second round here, Randy, Joseph Asai. I'm a big fan of. Fast guy, right? Probably needs to put on a little weight. Talk about Joseph Asai, edge from Texas.
Well, first off, I absolutely agree with you. I think edge, in my opinion, is a little. I think you want to get that fixed, and I really would love to see an edge at 26. The problem is, like you already mentioned, the class is just not very deep, and I think the fall off that you would get from taking a corner at is it 59? I believe is their second pick.
Yes.
Fall off you would get from taking a corner at 59 compared to 26 is much greater drop off than what you would get from an edge at 20 between 59 and 26. So Aside, to me, there is a bit of a gamble. He may not be there at 59. But if he is, you're talking about a player who really fits the system well. He kind of looks a little to me like an Olivier Vernon. He's, I believe they're the same height, right around 6'3". He a size a little under 250. I think Vernon was right at 250, 255, somewhere in that range. But one thing that was interesting too about Vernon is if you notice when he really started to come on last year, Joe Woods stopped with the, trying to keep him in a box. He was no longer just this hand in the dirt defensive end. He was standing up and pass rushing as well. Osai's done a little bit of both. He's done the hand in the dirt. He does the stand up pass rushing as a outside linebacker. So I think that kind of versatility and how to use them in different ways. I think Joe Woods would like that. He's been in every game. I believe he's played 36 games the last 3 years. Started the majority of them. Started I believe 24 of the games, and he is just he's usually suited up, ready to go. He's a great player, and he's not just a guy that only generates pressures. He had 90 tackles in 2019. So he's able to get out there, make the tackles, get after the ball carrier. So I do also believe that with him, excuse me, you're going to have a little bit of development. But that's why somebody like Takk McKinley is so important. McKinley, he's got the ability to start, as long as he's healthy. You've seen that it went south in Atlanta pretty quickly. So you don't want to rely on him 100%, but you can have him in there for this first year and let Asai work his way into the lineup and see what he can do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Joe Woods, I think, ideally wants to be able to bring guys in waves. At least that's what he did, Saleh did in San Francisco with their front. And, to be able just to add, I mean, whoever they add at edge, whether it be at 26 or 59 or through free agency or whatever they do, they need to add as many pieces as possible, I think. They've got some flexibility up there with Malik Jackson, who can play out and in, and Sheldon has shown the ability to do the same. Right. So they can move guys around, keep guys fresh, and a rookie can step in, like Joseph Asai or maybe an Azeez Ojulari if he drops to them at 26, who I like a lot, and I believe you mentioned as well, that they can just play that role of coming in and playing 20 snaps a game or whatever it may be, right, to get after the quarterback. And I think that's an ideal fit for a guy that you want to bring along long term,
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And Azeez is another guy I really like. There was a while it seemed like he'd be there till 26. I'm not so sure he will anymore. If he is, you absolutely jump all over that. But yeah, I think Azeez and Joseph Asai they're built pretty similar. They have similar games. Azeez is a little more refined and ready to go. But yeah, I definitely like both of those guys.
One thing about edge that I will mention to you and see what you think about this is, there's not really a consensus like top 5 in this draft. So like there's a lot of guys that you'll see like sneak into a top 5 on different guys' top, boards at edge. So like, like you'll see Weaver pop up and you see Owe up there and kind of some people value these guys, see these guys completely differently. Like guys that, maybe I value some of their opinion, like a Chris Sims or, a Bulger or whatever. Their top 5s are very different. And, I think that's a little strange. So it'll be interesting to see what the Browns value. I know they value age a lot, which I think Osai makes a lot of sense here because he's younger, I believe.
Yeah, I believe he just played the 3 years. He only played 3 years at Texas. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's crazy because you'll see some people really love Greg Rousseau, and I've seen others talk about he could fall all the way to the third day. And there is no consensus on who is the best edge rusher in this class, and I think that just speaks to the fact that it's not as deep as we're used to seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Ronnie Perkins, some people value really high. Some people don't even have him in the top 5. Same with Weaver. So that's interesting stuff, and I think something to keep an eye on. That Jalen Phillips, who tested out of this world, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole just because of the concussion thing. You know what I mean? I just don't think
100%. I think, and I think he could be a player that could be great, but you have to wonder for how long,
Exactly.
He's already retired once with the injuries and, you wish the best for him, but you already alluded to the injury problems Cleveland's having. You don't want to have another guy that you're constantly holding your breath on every play.
Absolutely. You're watching All Eyes on Cleveland, listening to All Eyes on Cleveland. This is the Browns mock draft breakdown featuring Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. Let's move on to the third round here where the Browns have 2 picks. The first of the 2 picks, I'm sure would make a lot of Ohioans happy here. Pete Werner, linebacker, Ohio State. Talk a little bit about Pete Werner here at linebacker.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like there's there's a couple ways Cleveland can go with this. You can go with a linebacker kind of in the, day 2, or 3rd round pick or so, or they may not even go with one at all. It's hard to tell. They don't seem to value the position a whole lot, which I understand. You've got the 4-2-5 defense that they want to run primarily. But that's why I kind of like Pete Werner. He's got some experience in playing in coverage. He dropped back at safety a bit early in his career with Ohio State. And that's really when I was doing this mock and I saw him there, that's really what drew me to him for the Browns, is the fact that you can put him on the field and he can play in coverage. You've got the guys like Anthony Walker that can go and they can stop the run. They can, go and make all the tackles, but they don't really have that guy that can play in that linebacker role and, cover and run with the tight end or running back out in the backfield. And I kind of feel like he's the guy that can do that for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a guy that can cover in that room would be very helpful. Another guy that we've seen, just seems to kind of fall into, for whatever reason, Browns mocks, right? Tutu Atwell. And it's certainly a need, the speed aspect of this. Talk about why you got Tutu Atwell with their 2nd pick in the 3rd round here, Randy.
It's one of those things where I do my mocks all on the Draft Network, and it's just if we're doing the real draft, I'm not even so sure that he would be there at this point. But it was kind of one of those things where if he's there, you have to take him.
Yeah.
I know they put up good yardage last year with the receivers that they have, and as long as Odell Beckham Jr. comes back, they should be able to get vertical a little more. But Odell struggled with injuries a lot, and he is coming back from a pretty serious injury. So I think expecting him just to jump back in and be OBJ right away is kind of putting a little bit of pressure on him. So it'd be nice to have another guy like Otwell, who I know he's a little bit undersized. You'd like to get a little more height out there at receiver, but at least what Otwell can bring to the table is a guy who can stretch the field. He blink of an eye, he can be past the defender. Averaged, I can see it right there. It was over 18 yards a catch in 2019. So he's the kind of guy I think you look at in that last game against Kansas City when nobody can get past the man coverage. You have a player like that out there, it could have made a huge difference.
Yeah. And you see there that 18.4 per catch. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? He's 5'9", and as you mentioned right here in your article, the speed thing, right? That's the biggest thing for him. And I don't know what it is. And you're right. No matter where I've done my, you play around with these mock drafts, he's always there for the Browns, right? Where it seems like a good value, and that's kind of why I think he pops up in a lot of these. As you mentioned, he may be gone by that point, but it's interesting, in those mocks why that comes up. Interesting pick here. I like 4th round. Addressing the defensive tackle room, Alan McNeil. I don't know a lot about him. You can talk to him about me here a little bit.
Yeah, McNeil's he's a big body guy, 6'2", 315. He kind of plays like a one technique, but he's more athletic than a lot of the one techniques. He's still developing, so to me he feels like a player that could work behind Andrew Billings during his rookie season, and it's more of a pick for the future. He may not do a whole lot. Of course, like you said, they like to bring things in waves. He's going to be on the field as a rookie, but I think his big impact would be felt the following year. But one techniques, they're incredibly important, but because of the fact that they're not on the field all the time, they end up falling a bit in the draft. And I think it'd be a really good value pick if they're able to snatch him up at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly an area I think that, like you said, if you add an edge in the draft and say you add let's just talk positionally at this point, right? Alan McNeil, whoever, defensive tackle that fits this mold, 6'2", 315. Exactly what you're talking about, bringing people in waves, right? On that defense. And now you got, 2 rookies that can get in and play. They don't have to play a ton of downs, but can get in and keep your guys fresh and get that valuable playing time. And it looks here like you feel like he's a really good value at that pick, so that's cool. Good stuff there. Browns mock draft breakdown here on All Eyes on Cleveland, featuring Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily. Breaking down his mock, just came out today. Brendan James, offensive tackle, Nebraska, the 4th round, 2nd pick, 4th round.
Right. Yeah, and here it's really just about, you lose Kendall Lamb, who was really an underrated player for the Browns.
Yes.
And, no knock on him at all, but unfortunately he was needed a lot over the last couple of years just with so many injuries to the offensive linemen. I know Chris Hubbard's coming off of a serious injury. You're hoping that he's going to be back, but Hubbard also spent a lot of time backing up the guards, and he seemed to be a lot better when he would fill in at guard than when he played right tackle. So it's could be kind of nice to keep Hubbard inside. So really here it's a guy who played, started at left tackle for the Cornhuskers. He's a developmental player, decent in pass sets, but somebody that could kind of work behind Conklin and Wills and kind of replace what they had with Kendall Lamb.
Certainly. I think that offensive line is certainly something that they will address with one of the picks in the draft, so that makes sense. I really like your 5th and 6th round picks a lot. I think these are both really good value picks here. Talk about Derek Forrest, as you have as the Browns' 5th round pick, safety from Cincinnati. Like this kid a lot.
Yeah, he's great size, 6 foot, right around 200 pounds. Very just consistent player. He's not one of those guys that really ever jumped off the tape doing anything that, was going to be making tons of highlight reels, but he did everything that was asked of him. For the Browns, they're looking good right now with their safeties with John Johnson. Hopefully Grant Delpit's back. Ronnie Harrison Jr. was an absolute steal for what they got him for. So they're good at safety with those 3, but wanting to start 3 safeties, they need to be a little deeper than just having Sheldrick Redwine as the primary backup. And Forrest is a guy who, like I see you highlighted there, the scheme diversity. He can play more than just one role. So he wouldn't just be a guy that would back up, the deep safety or kind of what they're calling like that money backer role. He can come in and play several different spots wherever they're needing them.
Good stuff there. I like that pick a lot. And then this one really jumped off the page to me because I'm really high on this guy, Tay Gowan. And I don't know if he'll be there in the 6th round. He may be. I don't know. It depends on how people value him. This is a big, long, lanky corner who can run, jump. I mean, he's a super freaky athlete, right? And out of UCF. I like him a lot. I think I had him in one of my, just playing around mocks. I think I had him in like their second pick in like the fourth round. So to get him in the sixth would be amazing. Talk about Tay Gowan a little bit.
Yeah, it's the same thing. What I was talking about with Otwell earlier, where it was, I'm agreeing with you. I don't know that he really would be there on the sixth. If he is, you have to take him. I do like the kid a lot. He may end up being one of those that goes a lot earlier than I'm even expecting because of everything you just mentioned. But for a while there, it seemed like nobody was really talking about him. A couple of Dog Pound Daily have liked him, have mentioned things in articles, and I really like his size and everything. But the biggest thing with taking a corner there is what I wrote at the end there. They just simply need more bodies. They've struggled with injuries. Even Denzel Ward has been having a hard time staying on the field for 16 games, and so far Kevin Johnson, Terrence Mitchell aren't bad. I believe Mitchell re-signed with somebody else, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so
the Texans.
That's right. Okay, so their defensive back room is kind of depleted a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if they added the two here and then brought in a whole bunch of undrafted free agents. They need to add cornerbacks for sure.
Definitely, yeah. Need more bodies there, especially outside corner.
Right.
And probably need a backup for Troy Hill too, or somebody that can play in there. Yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, you're right. He wasn't getting mentioned a lot, but he is starting to get mentioned more. He just has elite size and length for a guy to play that has his ability to have those kind of hips and run with wide receivers. I mean, he'll be bigger than a lot of them. So
he's got all the stuff you can't teach. So
yeah, absolutely.
You pick him up a bit, and this guy could be special.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy that fits, those bigger corners, they like that in that cover three. Seattle cover three that the Browns like to run a lot. So he might be a scheme fit there as well. So I like you did a really good job on this mock draft. I think it's tremendous, Randy. So I appreciate you talking about that. Real quickly before we get off this screen here, today per NFL.com, we just wanted to talk about this real quick. Chad Reuter had a article, 7 day one trades that make sense. And he kind of mocked this trade. The Browns go up to 18. And the Dolphins go back to 26 to get up there. The Browns would give up one of this year's third rounders and a sixth rounder. Seems kind of pricey to go up 8 spots, but I'm sure that's what the table says, right? And then he starts talking about linebackers a lot. Tulsa's Zaven Collins and Kentucky's Jamin Davis. I think that's how you say that, right? And then our two worthy mid first-round picks. I think we both agree if they were going to do something like that, it certainly wouldn't be to take a linebacker. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think if they're making a trade like that, you're looking at someone like Aziz from Georgia. I mean, you're moving up to get an impact pass rusher or something. If you're going to tell me that that's the trade they're going to make to give up a third and a sixth to go get someone who you believe could be an elite pass rusher, I'd be happy with that. Honestly, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's exactly like you said. It's kind of the price of doing business, and if that's what it took, and you knew you were going to get a guy that you could start across from Myles Garrett and have the potential of putting up another 10 sacks, and that's worth it. But yeah, definitely not for a linebacker. No offense to either of those players. They're both good players, but
excellent.
I also think they both would be available at 26 if they were really wanting them.
I agree. I totally agree. My question about Zaven Collins is you hear about his ability to actually rush the passer, right? So could he be used as an edge? I don't know. Or are they looking at him as traditional, more just straight up linebacker? It depends on what they want to do with him there.
And I don't think that he would be a traditional edge. I mean, it's not what he played. I know that in his high school days, I think he played like some quarterback even. He is a versatile guy, but I think he was more of a being able to blitz off the edge, just like a Sam linebacker or something like that. yeah, I don't think that you'd put his hand in the dirt or anything like that. Then you're taking away what he does best. But yeah,
Okay.
I absolutely do like him as a player.
Yeah.
I think this coaching staff, the analytical general manager, front office, all that, I just don't see them taking a linebacker in the first round.
Yeah, I agree. I firmly believe that they are hoping that Jacob Phillips can make that leap, especially with the help of like an Anthony Walker, who has been really good for guys around him.
That was an underrated signing, the Anthony Walker signing. That was really good. And then if you look at Jacob Phillips, week 17 against the Steelers when he had the 10 tackles,
yes,
that guy was all over the field. So that was just a brief flash of what he can do. So you're absolutely right. I think they're banking on those guys being their two main linebackers.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's probably the way they'll go. So I just thought that was interesting. Wanted to bring that up there and talk about that potential trade that he kind of threw out there. It, like you said, it would be worthwhile to probably go up and get an Aziz, but not to go up and get a linebacker, at least in my opinion. Right. All right, so I think we both agree that their biggest needs are cornerback and edge. Any other guys you want to mention there that you potentially think could be at 26 and talk about before we move on there? We've talked about Aziz a lot. I think he could fall there depending how the first round goes. But like we said, there's a lot of guys that are valued differently here, and we don't really know where they land on some certain teams' boards. What about at corner, though?
One name that's interesting to me would be Caleb Farley.
Yeah.
I know he had the back injury, so there might be a little concern. But, not too long ago, people were talking about him as a surefire top 15 pick. And the crazy thing about him, too, is I believe he's like 6'2", right around 200 pounds. He's another one of those really big corners that can play on the outside, but he's also really new to the position, but if you watch him play in 2019, he didn't look new. He looked like he knew what he was doing, but the fact is he's still learning the position and he's already this good. So I think if he falls to you at 26, that's one that it's going to be something to really think about. Again, I think most teams might jump at it, but for Cleveland, again, with the injuries, I don't want to keep harping on that, but they may be a little gun shy to bring somebody else in. But I mean, it sounds like it might have just been a freak thing. He said he hurt his back working out. So
yeah,
if he's healthy, he's interesting.
You're right. There's a lot of weird question marks around some of these corners, like Horn, who we know is like an elite guy, but there's some injury worries there. Farley's back, who I think Farley is pretty much probably the best corner in the class, minus his back. At least that's what a lot of people are saying. Chris Sims did his top 5, and he always throws some different names in there. There's a guy named Tyson Campbell out of Georgia that he had at number 3, and you don't see him on anybody's top 5 boards. But I watched this kid's tape, and this kid is legit, like tremendous traits at cornerback. I wonder if a guy like him would be there at 26 or even maybe 59, depending on where teams value him.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it seemed like when the offseason first started, Campbell was kind of the top guy from Georgia. And then people started realizing how good Eric Stokes could be. Eric Stokes is a little more explosive. But, Campbell, I think you're right. I think he's a legit player. And it wouldn't surprise me if he was there at 59. It's kind of like was it Trevon Diggs last year from Alabama?
Yep.
He was one of those players that was good enough that people thought maybe he could be a first-round player, but the next thing you know, he went into the 50s, and he'll probably end up being a solid NFL player for a while. So it's kind of nice when you get that a good corner class when you're needing one. So you may still be able to find a decent one in the second round.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we've got a couple more things here we'll hit, and then I don't want to take too much of your time here, Randy. You're doing a great job, awesome job on the mock draft. We appreciate you making time for us on All Eyes on Cleveland for sure. Let's talk succession plans here. So, areas that the Browns need to address, not so much for this year, but for the future. I think that for me, it's like wide receiver, offensive line, defense, interior defensive line. Probably all of the defensive line, really. What are your thoughts on succession plans as far as what needs to be addressed in this draft for the future?
I think you hit the three areas really perfectly.
Okay.
I think, wide receiver, Odell and Jarvis they're not getting any younger. You're going to have to start wondering about their contracts as well. If their talent and what they're bringing to the table still is worth what they're going to be paid. Of course, we've been saying it since he's been here, but if Odell's healthy, he's absolutely worth it. But we keep saying if Odell's healthy. So yeah, I think trying to get a wide receiver would be good. Whether that's somebody early on or a late round pick, somebody that you feel like you can try to develop. But I think they do need somebody to work behind Odell. I would put defensive tackle next. I really like Malik Jackson and Sheldon Richardson both, but they're both 31 years old.
Yeah.
Andrew Billings is on a 1-year deal. Jordan Elliott, he flashed some potential as a rookie, but we need to see a little more of what he can do. It would be nice to get a defensive tackle and that can work with them.
No question.
Yeah, the thing with the line is I feel like they've tried to address that a little bit. I think the biggest name to watch when it comes to needing somebody waiting in the wings would be center. I feel like Batonio is going to be fine for a while, but J.C. Treader, the guy's a warrior. He's battled through so many injuries, so you have to kind of be ready. Eventually, you hate to say it, but eventually he won't win all the battles. But last year they did draft Nick Harris. I liked Harris a lot at Washington.
Me too.
It was unfortunate he got injured because I would have liked to have seen a little more once they needed some help with guard to see him out there, see what he can do. But I think Harris can still kind of be the guy to replace Treader down the road. So
okay,
I don't feel like that one's as much of a need just yet as the other two.
Okay, makes sense. All right. So let me ask you this. This is always kind of different. Your draft strategy, and we kind of are still learning where Andrew Barry's at with all this, but, people pound on the table and say, BPA best player available, right?
Yeah.
But it's always really kind of best player available at position of need or position of value in reality, because you're building a team. You're not just picking blindly, right? So, at least that's the way I look at it. And, we had Jake Burns on the show, and I asked him the same question, and he kind of broke down the whole, it's BPA at a position of value, so wide receiver edge, not so much need, but value, right? Like you're not going to take a running back if he's the best guy on your board, or a linebacker is kind of what we've said is not really a value position for them. Where do you come out on all of this?
I think that's really a good way to break it down. I think need always is going to come into play. Like what you just, but I also like what he's saying with the position of value. That makes sense too, because you can sit here and say, need matters, because if the Browns are on the board at 26 and the best player is Samuel Cosme, they're not going to pick an offensive tackle. They don't need one. But I also like him saying the position of value, because they're probably also not going to pick a linebacker. They may need one, but that's not a huge value position to them.
Exactly.
So I think that is I've always kind of said that it is best player available with need influence, but I like the positional value even better than that. I hadn't heard that before, but yeah, I absolutely agree that you've got to fill your needs, and you're right too with Andrew Barry. We don't know, we haven't seen enough of him running his own show to know, but what we do know is it last year and so far in this offseason, he's been very aggressive about filling weaknesses. He attacked offensive tackle last year with getting Conklin in free agency, and then getting Jedrick Wills at pick number 10, and then taking Grant Delpit in the second round. He knew what the team needed, and he got it without reaching. And that's why when I look at my mock draft, that's why I was going cornerback first, because I felt like he's going to look at, I need a corner, I need an edge, which one's going to give me the best value at this pick? Which one can I still get a decent value out of the next pick? But yeah, I absolutely agree with that. declarable term based off of value, positional value.
Yeah. Yeah, so let me run this scenario by you then, okay? We talked about the succession plans. Let's say defensive tackle and wide receiver because they just kind of fit here, right? So what happens if you get an elite wide receiver drops to 26 and Ojulari's not there, and Newsom's not there, or whatever, or the guy that they really value isn't there? Would you be comfortable with them taking an elite wide receiver at 26? I mean, understanding that that's a kind of a pick for the future, but would you be okay with that?
Man, I'm glad you asked that because I absolutely would.
Yeah.
The very first mock draft I did at this offseason, it caught a lot of flack, but it was I had them taking Terrace Marshall Jr. from LSU at number 26. And really, it goes back to what I had said earlier when I was talking about Tutu Atwell. If you had that guy that could kind of beat that man coverage, you probably would have beat Kansas City. Yeah. And we can't just say, well, Odell's coming back. Yeah, he's coming back, but how long is it going to take for him to get up to speed and get, that's a serious injury he's coming back from.
No question.
And we've already talked about the succession plan. So you're not just drafting a wide receiver to help you this year. I mean, he can help you this year, and there's nothing wrong with having too many good wide receivers. I mean, I get Stephon runs a, 2 wide receiver set the majority of the time, but he rotates them in and out as well. So me personally, I would have no problem running to the podium and getting an elite wide receiver at number 26. As long as, if that's what you feel like is going to really help the team the best. And even if they did that, some people might get a little upset saying they didn't adequately, address the defense. But I mean, look what they did in the offseason free agency. They filled the majority of the holes. They still can use some help, but if they went in there with this starting defense right now, it's already, quite a bit better than what they had a season ago.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I guess ideally in a perfect world, I think, an Ojulari or a corner that you really have high on your board lands there for you for 26. But I mean, if there was a guy there that you're just like, man, this guy should not be here at 26 at wide receiver, I would have no problem with them taking him too, because I mean, let's face it, the future at wide receiver after this season, something has to give, right? $30 million to 2 guys in that room, something's got to give there. I think preparing for that now, I don't have any issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about wide receivers. I think the one that I would really love to see fall to 26, but kind of seems like a pipe dream now, is Rashad Bateman. He fits this offense, like a glove, and would just be, if that guy fell to 26, I'd be pounding the table hoping that they're drafting him.
Yeah. I don't think that, Barry's a smart guy. I'm sure that they are prepared to potentially do something like that, if it were to happen. We've seen Christian Barmore, mocked to the Browns at defensive tackle. What if a tackle like him is there at 26, and they value him more than an edge or a cornerback? Would that upset you?
No, I like Christian Barmore a lot. I would hope if they did draft someone like him, then you would see a little more of like Malik Jackson or Sheldon Richardson kind of playing on the right side. If they're going to continue to keep Miles kind of playing more of the left this year. At least either on the earlier downs, just to get because then you'd have a whole lot of good offensive or defensive tackles. So you'd want to see them on the field. Barmore would absolutely be a great succession plan to start, in 2022. But he's also just such a good player that I wouldn't want to see him sitting on the bench all year either. So yeah, but that one absolutely would not upset me.
Sounds good. I'm right there with you. If that's where Barry has them and they fit, like those are both position of value and position of need for the future, right, then I don't have a problem with it. Where do you come out on the whole Browns courting of Jadeveon Clowney at this point, Randy? As you are watching All Eyes on Cleveland Browns mock draft breakdown featuring Randy Gurzi of Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone. We went over his mock draft. If you're just jumping on now, it says All Eyes on Cleveland. Hit subscribe at the bottom. or catch the podcast where all popular podcasts are found. But you can go back and check out Randy's mock, certainly, and we're just kind of talking Browns topics as we approach the draft here. The draft that will take place actually in Cleveland. They actually started building the stage today. I don't know if you heard
I saw
that,
some
but yeah,
pictures on Twitter. That's pretty cool.
yeah, that's awesome. So some cool logos and stuff there with the waterfront and everything. All right. Do you think the Browns should continue to pursue Clowney? I mean, this courtship almost seems is on the verge of obsession in my mind here as we are back at the table with him again. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I saw somebody actually even ask Mary Kay that in one of her mailbags. Said, "Wow,
Yeah.
obsessed with him." And
Yeah.
you know, when I my very first gig actually with Fansided, or first editorial gig with Fansided was for Toro Times covering the Houston Texans, and this was back when Clowney was young.
Yeah.
And I remember back then there was something about him. The dude is incredibly talented. One of the most talented players I've ever seen. But I don't know if it's a lack of passion or what, but sometimes he just doesn't seem to want to go. And I think if Steve Spurrier made a comment about that, like, if you could ever get his fire lit, the guy's unstoppable. And I'm absolutely not trying to knock the guy at all. I don't know what you're getting in him. One of the things I keep talking about is the last 3 teams he's been on didn't really seem interested in bringing him back. Houston traded him away. Seattle didn't want to re-sign him. It doesn't seem like Tennessee's really pushing hard to bring him back. So it feels like there's something there where the culture and everything that they're building in Cleveland, I'm like, I don't know that that's what you want to bring in. And then you also have to think about the injuries. He's missed a lot of time, and you already have Takaris McKinley out there, who's a very talented defensive end that you're wondering if he's healthy, if he can go. So I don't know if you want to add another, if he's healthy, defensive end.
Yeah, the thing with Clowney is it's like, okay, you make great points about the teams not wanting him back. However, I thought he played well in Seattle, like despite his numbers. So his numbers haven't panned out. Like the sack numbers aren't there, right?
Right.
But to me, he plays the run tremendously. Yeah. To me, he's kind of a more of a fuck the play up guy, right? Like he just causes havoc back there, and I still think he can be incredibly effective, especially across from Myles Garrett. So I don't want to rule him out because I think he could be elite if he could stay healthy. Now the Browns had him in town. To me, I would think they would be checking his knees, right? Yeah. Because that seems like a potentially career-ending issue if your knees are continually giving out on you, and the Titans only got 10 games out of him. However,
I think they only got 8.
Yeah, 8 games. So it's all about price, though, because all right, the rumor was $17 million last year that the Browns were ready to pay him, and he took less, right, to go to the Titans. I don't know. The guys that were on the market this year, the guys that were at the top of the edge board, and it was a deep edge free agency class, the top guys got over $12 million a year in a cap crunch free agency offseason. Is he going to does he still think he's elite $12 million a year? Because he's not. I'm not going to pay him that money to come in here with the injury concerns, with the lack of production, with the questions around him in the locker room. Not that he's a bad guy in the locker room, but just like you mentioned, it's not like big teams are begging him to come back, right? The questionable effort on every down, right? What lights his fire, I don't know. But I am intrigued if, say, he wants to come in for $5 or $6 million a year. I would certainly kick the tires or kick his knees or whatever you want to say and see if he wants to come in at that point, because just envisioning him opposite Myles Garrett, that's intriguing to me. And I understand why they would check that, because he is an elite talent when he's healthy. So can you get him healthy? Can you get him in here at a reasonable price? I doubt it. My intuition says he probably wants $10 million to $12 million a year, and he probably wants, X, Y, and Z, and with the health questions, I just don't think that the Browns can afford to do that or should do that. Any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like you're talking about, you start getting in that 10 to 12 million range, and they're going to start having to, renegotiate a lot of contracts and stuff just to be able to afford the rookie class that comes in. And it seems like a lot of work. But I do get it. I get everything you're saying about why Browns are into it. You talk about putting a number one pick across from a number one overall pick. That would be a really good defensive line if you can get them healthy. There's definitely risk involved. But there is, if it panned out, it would be a really high reward. And I'd be happy to say I was wrong if he came and did wonderful. I'd be happy to say, yep, I was wrong on that one. But I'm agreeing with you. I don't think he's going to take what the Browns can afford.
If you could get that point across to him, like Jadeveon, you're no longer like a premier, get on free agency. For us, the only way we want you is like we see your upside, but we want you as like a low risk, high reward signing. Like that's what we need to have you as. Like money wise, injury wise, you're a low risk, high reward Tack McKinley type of signing at this point in your career. And I don't think that he sees himself that way. I think he's a little disillusioned.
Yeah, and it would be. You feel like for him it would be one of the things that you could get through to him, because if he came in and signed a team-friendly deal on this defensive line that suddenly has Malik Jackson, Sheldon Richardson, Andrew Billings, Myles Garrett, he could put together enough of a year to where somebody's going to come out and give him that money he wanted to make up for whatever he gave up this year.
Yeah, I mean, you could sell that to him, right? Like you want no double teams, etc., easy matchups across from Myles Garrett. And a good front four. We'll, take the less money this year and then get the performance out there on tape, and you'll get paid again. Then's your opportunity to go out and ask for $15 million next year from somebody else, right? Yep. I think that certainly could be a pitch to him.
And then the real thing that matters there is, if someone else does come in and offer him the $10 to $12 million, then of course he's just going to take that, because of course once the money's there, you're going to take it. But the longer he's available, the better the chance the Browns do have of actually convincing him to come in. So
yeah, and that's the other question is, I mean, he sat out all through camp last year, all through even the, he waited all the way till like almost week 1 or whatever, right? Like. Yeah, and we want this guy in camp, right? Like, I mean, if he's going to do that again, I'm not interested.
Yeah, they're saying he didn't want to play, didn't want to be at camp. And I mean, I don't know if there's truth to that, but, if so, that's another one of those, another concern on my part. So
yeah, that's part of the problem, right?
It's a tough call. I'm glad this is one time I'm glad I'm not a GM having to make that decision.
Yeah, for sure. But still kind of blown away that after all that, after what happened in Tennessee, they brought him in and everything. I got to think that, they're trying to sell him on, Cleveland as a potential option, and also maybe checking on that knee a little bit. Yeah. Where do you have the Browns as far as the top of the AFC goes at this point? Post-free agency, pre-draft, do you have them as the AFC North favorites? And in the AFC big picture, which is going to be loaded, right? The AFC is loaded with great quarterbacks and good teams. Where do you have the Browns?
I don't know if it's the homer in me coming out saying that I feel like they should be the number 2 team. I know Pittsburgh had, they got Juju back, and, Ben Roethlisberger decided to come back, but I don't know that those are wins for them. They're topping like they are. I feel like the team we saw at the end of the season for Pittsburgh is what they're going to be. Baltimore, it's just I don't know that they'll ever be able to win it all with their offense. They just that running attack just never carries a team, and once you have to start throwing it in the playoffs against teams like Kansas City and stuff like that. But they're built for the regular season. They're built to put up 12, 13 wins all the time. So unfortunately, I hate even saying it, but I feel like they probably are still the favorites coming into the year.
Pittsburgh?
No, Baltimore.
Okay, all right.
In Baltimore,
All
I
right.
said Baltimore's built for the regular season. They're the ones
Okay.
that won the playoffs and all that. I think
I thought you were talking about Pittsburgh for a minute. I was like,
Oh,
wait a
no,
minute here.
No, Pittsburgh, I think would be, Pittsburgh, I think might not even be third right now because Cincinnati can keep Burrow protected. But I just feel like Pittsburgh's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, keep bringing Ben back, please.
Yeah,
I mean,
bring him
he
back.
dominated us all those years. Let's get a couple shots on him on his way out the door, right?
I wouldn't have hated if his final game ever was that loss while our coach was dealing with COVID. But
the crying was a special touch, on the sidelines.
If we can do it again, that would be even better.
Yeah, even better. Exactly. Make you cry a couple times here before he hangs him up. Yeah, I just don't know what they're doing. They've lost a lot on the defensive side of the ball. I never want to overlook Pittsburgh just because of the coaching and the organization that they are. It's just I fail to kind of see where they're going. Offensive plan wise, they certainly need a running game that they don't really have established at this point. And we're going to see what they do in the draft and everything. But, that offense last year was, very hard to watch. The little, the 2-yard slants and the 60, 70 throws for 4 yards. I just don't know if what their plan will be this year. But, and I don't think Roethlisberger is ready to lead them to another AFC title. So I kind of am writing them off a little bit, but I still keep an eye on them a little bit in the back. I mean, I saw a lot of power rankings that had them 10th in the NFL, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, like I said, I feel like they're heading in the wrong direction. And it's nice to see Cleveland being the one that's, trending upward for a change and getting a lot better. I do still think they need to knock off Baltimore. They need to get that win over Baltimore, and then we can start talking about if they can be favorites in the North.
Yeah, I feel like I think I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think that they are probably the favorites in the North. I think they're better than Baltimore at this point. I really question Baltimore's offense at this point. And you nailed it. They're made to kind of dominate in the regular season with that run attack, but I just feel like an improved Browns defense should be able to beat them at home for sure, and they may be better than them all around running it back. With the Browns' offense is just so much more dynamic than their offense is. That shootout epic game that they played was kind of to me, almost even though they didn't get the win and they just still have to get over the hump for them, but it was hey, they're just as good as this team. They can go blow for blow with them, and that was with a shit ass defense, right? So now you run it back with John Johnson, Troy Hill, healthy guys, a healthy Grant Delpit maybe, and it seems like they would be better than them potentially in 2021 at least. I mean, I have them up there, not with the Bills and the Chiefs and stuff, not above them, but right below them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't knock anybody for that. There's definitely times where I try not to be too much of a homer, so I might be being too hard on them, thinking that Baltimore's still ahead of them. I think the biggest problem for me is how hard it is for Cleveland to stop the run. I'm hoping that the signings that they made, Anthony Walker's good against the run, and Malik Jackson can get it done, and Andrew Billings is really good against the run. So I'm hoping that maybe those signings will kind of change the tide a little bit. I think if they get into a shootout, if they can get Baltimore needing to throw the ball, Cleveland's clearly the better team.
Yeah,
it's just
I agree.
When the defense last year, when the defense would let the running game kind of have their way with them, it left a bad taste in my mouth. So I'd like to see that washed out. For
sure. Makes sense. They certainly are going to be able to run the ball, that's for sure. They're very dependent upon that. All right, Randy Gurzi, Dog Pound Daily, NFL Spin Zone, done a great job here tonight. Last question for you, okay? Right. Anybody else you have an interest in still in free agency at corner or edge or any place else?
I'll be completely honest. I've turned my attention 100% to the draft right now.
To the draft? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, one name that I've heard out there, which I wouldn't hate, is Justin Houston.
Okay.
But I also wouldn't be shocked to see him just go right back to Indianapolis. I know he's a little bit on the older side, but he's still been producing for them. But yeah, if I was to see them get anybody else, it'd probably be somebody on that defensive line, get another defensive end out there. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Barry's at the point now where he's going to focus on the draft and then see what's left out there. Kind of like what they did last year when, after the draft is when they re-signed Rashard Higgins. It was like they wanted to wait to see, if they landed somebody there. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him make another signing or two after that.
The guy that I'm really interested in, one guy, Brashad Breeland, corner from Kansas City. I have always liked him a lot as a cornerback, and even playing the Chiefs last year, he's so, I think it was Romo that kept using the word sticky in man-to-man coverage, but he's so handsy and sticky, and he's just really good in the tight spaces, playing man-to-man. I just think adding a veteran like that can play outside, like you said, they need bodies out there. Yeah. I think a signing like Breeland would be a really nice signing for them. I would feel a lot better about that room.
I think they looked at him back like 2018, I believe it was.
Yeah.
I think he had gone to Green Bay, or maybe it was after Green Bay. But I remember they looked to kick the tires on him back then. So
yeah,
he definitely would be a player I would be interested in for sure.
Yeah, I just think he's come along as a nice player that you can use it certainly situationally and potentially as a guy that can help on the outside should one of those guys get hurt. It'd be nice to have not just a rookie out there, you know what I mean? Right. So I don't know how long MJ Stewart is for the roster, so we'll see. I mean, he played great down the stretch, but I've been hard on the guy because he's short and he's slow. Let's be honest. He's short and slow. He made some great plays against Pittsburgh, but
he did.
I think right place, right time might have been the better explanation of what happened on those plays. But still, Randy, you've been fantastic. We appreciate you coming on the show. I absolutely had a blast. This was great stuff, great content. Great job on your mock. We'd love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely, Brad. I enjoyed it, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, anytime. Randy Gurzi, Dog Pound Daily, NFL Spin Zone. Go to Dog Pound Daily. Check them out. They are certainly friends of ours over here at All Eyes on Cleveland. Have a good one, brother.
All right, you too, man. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
They're all eyes on Cleveland. We here, yeah.
And there was a great interview from Randy Gurzi, Dog Pound Daily, NFL Spin Zone. Go check him out tonight on tonight's Browns mock draft breakdown here at All Eyes on Cleveland. Guess what? We got a mailbag. It's a good mailbag tonight. It's definitely worth talking about. Good stuff for the Browns here. So as we just go over the hour mark, we apologize. We're going a little long, but that's okay. This stuff is good questions in the mailbag tonight. And so thanks to at Mac Sports Report, NEO Against the World. Thanks to the Land Sports at RBS_corrections. Always frequent flyers in our mailbag. And also thanks to Robert Stallnecker at Wildlife Lover, LUVER. Robert added some awesome stuff in here on these topics. So let's talk about some of this stuff. So the first question, And tonight's mailbag here at All Eyes on Cleveland was from NEO Against the World at Max Sports Report. Thank you again. How much money do the Browns have left to use in free agency? So the answer is the answer of how much money under the cap they are is approximately $13 million. Now, $7 to $8 million of that is going to be allocated for the draft in your rookie draft class, so the guys that you take in the draft, leaving about $6 million. Now, this question ties into the second question, so let's get into that, because really they have more room than that $6 million if they wanted it. But let's kind of talk about why they haven't taken advantage of that and the ups and downs or the pluses and minuses, pardon me, of why they haven't restructured some of these contracts. So great question from the Land Sports at RBS_corrections on Twitter, wrote into the All Eyes on Cleveland mailbag tonight. Why haven't they restructured any contracts yet to make more cap room? So this is a great question because they have some contracts that are very ready restructurable, right? Like, so Landry's contract is restructurable. Beckham's is. Sheldon Richardson is definitely restructurable. And then Robert made a great point, as he pointed out, Stallnecker on Twitter when he was making some points on this topic, that so is Case Keenum's, right? Backup quarterback. He's getting a lot of money to be backup quarterback. Certainly an area where you could restructure that, especially if you want to keep him around for a couple years. Now, whether they use that or not, let me make this point first before we get into why I don't think they've done this yet. Because you've seen teams all around the NFL restructuring these contracts. So the word of the offseason is void years, right? In this cap crunched 2021 offseason. These void years are how they're restructuring some of these contracts. So, like, they'll take somebody's base pay, convert it to a signing bonus, add some void years onto their deal, maybe add, an additional year of service on to some of these guys, and then that allows them to prorate out that payment that would have been, say, like a $10 million cap hit. By adding like 2 void years onto a deal and turning it into a signing bonus, they can then spread that out over the length of the 4 years. So it reduces their cap hit for 2021, where everybody's trying to squeeze and make more room because of the cap crunch. It allows them to prorate that, $10 million down to 2.5, say, right? If they got 2 years of a contract and then 2 more void years. For instance, Troy Hill's contract. So far, the Browns have elected to not restructure, but yet use those void years on their new contracts. So John Johnson III, more so Troy Hill, where it was reported, 4 years, $24 million. Really, it's 2 years, $9 million, and with 2 void years on the end of it, right? So what that allows them to do is pay him his base of like $1.07 million. The veteran's minimum base salary, give him the rest of that in signing bonus, and then prorate that out over 4 years. So his cap hit is only like $3 or $4 million, where it looks like it should be like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And it's not that because of the void years they put on the end of his contract. This is what everybody's doing. Some teams have been doing this for a long time, but it's been adopted by everybody in the NFL this offseason because of the cap crunch, right? So they've sort of used that to their advantage with the new players they've signed, right? So I think they did this with a couple of the new guys that have come in order to lower their cap hit for 2021. Now, the reason that you would restructure, let me make this clear, the reason you would restructure a contract now is because you need the immediate money. And I think that what Andrew Berry is thinking is, Why restructure Sheldon Richardson? Because part of his restructure, or part of getting him to do that, may be adding like a year on. Like, okay, listen, Sheldon's getting $12 million this year. If he were released to the open market, or say they cut him, right, they would be free of that $12 million, and Sheldon would never get that on the open market. So they could come to him and say, listen, we could cut you right now, and you wouldn't get that $12 million anywhere. But instead, let's restructure your deal, add another year on. We want you to stick around. We'll keep you for next year, but we'll make it like, $5 million. So together it's 17 or 16 million. So you're getting 8 a year. That's fair. X amount guaranteed. We'll roll this new portion of the contract or this year's guaranteed money. We'll give it to you all up front. That would allow them to then, tack on a couple of void years, and that would open up maybe like $8-9 million in cap space. But they haven't needed to do that yet. So, and the reason why I think that they haven't done that, and they could do the same thing with Landry as well, or Beckham if they wanted to push the issue, is because they haven't had to. Now, one thing that they're going to have to pay for, whether it be through probably pay for, is a Nick Chubb salary. Now, that's not going to hit, his new contract isn't going to hit this offseason. It's going to hit next offseason. So, do you want the flexibility of being able to say, Sheldon, see ya, and clear $12 million off your books? Odell, sorry, we're done. After this year, there's no more guaranteed money. They cut him. That's $15 million off your books. Now that's $27 million freed up for 2022 when you gotta pay Nick Chubb, and maybe you want to create some more room when you've already addressed your needs in free agency for 2021. That is money that maybe could get tied up if you work a restructure. So if you work a restructure with Sheldon Richardson and you add a year on, now all of a sudden next year you're not as flexible to create. You can't just say, bye Sheldon, you're 33, his game is maybe declining somewhat, and you want to go in a different direction with one of your, Jordan Elliott, somebody they draft this year, whoever it may be, to take his place on the interior defensive line, and you can just be done with him instead of restructuring it this year, and now he's around next year for, maybe it's only $5 million, but it's certainly less flexible and less money. Now, they may still do that if they need to. Say they want to go sign Clowney and they want to meet him at $7 or $8 million. They may do that restructure. But why do it if you don't need to? Let's stay more flexible for 2022 when you might have to pay Nick Chubb, or at the very least, sign him to a franchise tag. That money is then freed up if you want to say goodbye to Odell, if you want to say goodbye to Sheldon, and then now you can find a reasonable replacement. We talked about the succession plans, but as of right now, by not restructuring and adding any years onto these guys' contracts, you are free to just cut bait with them and create more money in 2022 moving forward. By restructuring now, you potentially tie yourself up. You create the money now, but you potentially limit what you can create going forward. If it was a sure thing they wanted to keep Sheldon Richardson in 2022, then it might make more sense. But I don't know what we're going to get out of him as he goes further into his 30s. I love him as a player. I think he's definitely a huge part of what they're going to do this year. I'm not like talking bad about Sheldon Richardson's game, but it's realistic to keep those options open, especially for guys in their 30s, especially for an Odell Beckham who hasn't produced yet. Let's see what he does this year, right? But I'd rather be able to say, see ya for $15 million than, tie yourself to him for another year now just to create some more money that they might not even need at this point. As we mentioned, they probably still have about $5 or $6 million in cap space if they wanted to use it. If you want to go sign a Bashaud Breeland or go try to sign Clowney, I wouldn't want to sign it for more than $6 million anyways. So that's why I would say that they aren't restructuring those guys now. It gives you the flexibility for 2022, and it allows you more money to free up if you want to just cut bait with a couple of the guys that are restructure candidates. As far as Case Keenum, I'd have to look further into that. That's a great point by Robert. He's certainly, I think, making too much money as a backup quarterback. But at the same time, if Baker were to go down for 2 or 3 games, Case Keenum is probably one of the better guys in the NFL that you could call on to get you a win or two, especially with our run game and hopefully a really good defense this year, or a much improved defense, that he could probably get you a couple wins and keep you on track to make the playoffs, etc. So that's kind of, money now versus money later. Getting the money now, it makes a lot of sense, and a lot of teams are doing that, and a lot of people are wondering why the Browns aren't restructuring to do that. I think Andrew Berry's holding back. He still reserves the right to do that with Sheldon, Landry, etc. And Robert makes some great points about their value meeting what they are. But by leaving those contracts alone, you certainly give yourself the option to walk away from them completely next year when maybe money is more of a need. The Browns had a ton of rollover money this year. So I think that's probably why he's waiting. He's probably waiting until he actually needs to use it, because if he's not going to use that cap room, probably doesn't want to restructure it, because it does give him more freedom going into next offseason. You don't want to tie yourself to somebody if you don't necessarily have to in the NFL. That's just the way business works. Hope you enjoyed All Eyes on Cleveland tonight. Great job by Randy Gurzi with the Browns mock draft breakdown. Hope that all made sense to you about the cap space, cap room. Great questions from the mailbag. Good points made on Twitter by Robert and the Land Sports and NEO Against the World. This has been another edition of All Eyes on Cleveland. Hope you enjoyed thoroughly. The audio podcast version will be available. All popular podcasts are found. Make sure, if you're watching live or on rewatch here, hit the subscribe button on your way out so you know every time we're coming on the air. We'll be back tomorrow night. Not waiting long. Back tomorrow night with Jeff Risdon, breaking down more draft strategy, draft talk. It's going to be a draft preview with Jeff Risdon tomorrow night on All Eyes on Cleveland. So make sure you hit that notification bell and the subscribe button. The show has been presented by Blue Wire Hustle. We thank them so much always. And once again, thanks to Randy Gurzi and Dog Pound Daily and NFL Spin Zone for lending his expertise and his mock draft for us to break down tonight. And with that, big thanks to Mikey. My name is Brad Ward. We are out.